Welcome to the Artist of Data Science Happy Hour. It is Friday, June 25th, 2021. Super excited to have all of you guys here. Everybody, welcome. Hope you got a chance to tune in to the episode I released today. Talk to the one and only, the great and powerful Ken G. It's an episode I've been waiting to release for quite some time, so I was happy to finally get him onto the show. So for those of you guys that are tuning in on YouTube, on where else, Twitch, on LinkedIn, you guys are more than welcome to join us right here in the Zoom room. The link is right there in the description. I'm excited for this weekend. It's going to be a amazing weekend. I get to spend both weekend mornings with my friend who happens to be here, Vin Vashista. I'm excited for Vin's course. Vin, real quick, man, tell us a little bit about this course that you got going on, because I, for one, am super, super excited about this.
Yeah, I love this class. So this is something that I've been teaching off and on for 3 years. But for the first time last month, I offered it out to see if anyone actually wanted to take it outside of corporate America. And yes, apparently it's fairly popular. And so this whole class is about strategy, but not business strategy the way Grandpa Porter taught business strategy. This is business strategy specifically for data scientists and people in our field, and talking about how artificial intelligence has changed strategy planning. It's changed business models. It's changed operating models. It has, that word disruption gets thrown around a lot. But what does that mean? What does it mean to disrupt the strategy of competitors? What does it mean to enter markets laterally, or even kind of parachute into markets like Amazon has done in some cases and Apple's done in some cases? And so the entire class is exploring all of the implications of AI. And it's aimed at teaching data scientists how you're basically at the middle of this. You're in the center of this strategic transformation that businesses either go through or they die. And so the whole class is aimed at teaching data scientists, anyone in the data science and machine learning field, how you can actually implement strategy, and how artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, your role, how you are a strategic role. And then how do you then, now that you're a strategic player, how do you implement data science? How do you actually boots on the ground, get it to work, get it functioning in the organization? And yeah, I'm excited because I know a lot of people that are in this class this weekend. And so this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, man, I'm super pumped for this. It's going to be really, really, really beneficial, I think, for me at this point in my career. Is it targeted to people who are mid-career, people who are find themselves in leadership roles? Like, who's kind of the intended audience for this course you got going on?
Originally, when I created it, it was strategy consultants. So these were folks that were in the business strategy world, and they're pure business strategy consultants. And after I did one about 3.5 months ago, and someone approached me after the class and said, wouldn't this be better if we had some data scientists in there? And so I pivoted the class a little bit, but it's still heavily focused on the strategy side of the house. But now it's speaking directly to data scientists at mid to late stages in their career, as well as people that are in leadership. But it's really, like I said, it's that kind of trying to drag you into the strategy world.
Yeah, man, I'm really, really excited for this. Hopefully you guys get a chance to join. I don't know if you got any spots left this weekend, Vin, but go ahead and drop a link right here in this chat, and I'll make sure I spread it on the chats for LinkedIn, YouTube, and
Appreciate
Twitch.
it.
Everybody else, man, super excited to have you guys here again. Hopefully you guys got a chance to tune into the episode that I did with Ken G today. Next week I got an awesome episode releasing with Dr. Jordan Ellenberg. He wrote the book Shape. So this book right here, Shape, he was generous enough to give me 2 copies. So 1 copy I'll be giving away next week right here on the show. Interestingly enough, this is a book about geometry. And I was watching one of Vin's videos the other day, and he's talking about how important geometry is to data science and machine learning. So if you want your chance to win this book, make sure you join us, and I'll figure out some way to pick a randomly selected winner. I'm good at doing random things. All right, guys, super excited to have all you guys here. So, man, I was thinking, like, that I'm seeing all these people graduating from high school all around here, right? They're doing their grad pictures and the lawns and stuff, doing drive-by grad parties. It's been 20 years since I graduated high school. Like, holy shit, man, 20 fucking years since I graduated high school. And I mean, my career has not been like the rosiest career. And I think about like, when I hear people like Vin talk or Joe talk, they talk about how they had such strong like guidance and leadership in the form of good managers and mentors and stuff like that. So for those of you who have had just amazing bosses that or mentors or guys that have helped you up until this point in your career, like how different do you think your career would have turned out? I guess let's start with Vin, then let's go to Makiko.
I think, I talk about great mentors because I don't want to talk about all the terrible ones I had. I had some trash managers, like some straight up trash managers, and I really hope they're not watching because at one point in my career, I was a trash manager. I mean, a lot of us as leaders don't get the kind of training you need before you dropped into a technical leadership role, and I didn't. So, it's not their fault. I'm not jumping all over them, but yeah, I had trash leaders and they jaded me pretty heavily. But I had enough good mentors that were able to kind of pull me out of some of the bad situations that I was in and develop my talent. They saw something in me that was worth developing. And so they put the time into me. And I'll be honest, without the good ones, I wouldn't be where I am right now. But also, without the bad ones, without the absolute trash that I had to work for, I wouldn't be where I am now either. I've had some managers that, through being horrible at their job, taught me how to be an amazing leader. I've had, a lot of education from both sides. And so while, yeah, they're toxic jobs, at the same time, while in the toxic situation, I was able to learn a whole lot and find people who were willing to mentor me, who were willing to also grab me and pull me out of that situation. So, I mean, that's for me, I've had both sides, and my career wouldn't be the same if I didn't have good and bad.
Yeah, man, I absolutely love that because I mean, I was reflecting on my career and I've had to go a lot of this shit alone. Like, I mean, I've had a couple of bosses at a couple of jobs, but for the most part, they were not that great of bosses. And the times where I did, like, I just spent a lot of time like with no manager, having to lead myself. And I guess maybe that's one reason why I'm just kind of disciplined at getting shit done. But like the importance of having good managers, good bosses, I think can't be understated. Makiko, let's talk about you. How what do you think your career would be like if you hadn't had talking about the good mentors and the good bosses that we've had?
For real, it wouldn't exist. That's just like straight up the answer, because I think so something that one of my mentors actually, and mentor of at least 10 plus years, right? Because he initially started as my fencing coach in high school, right? For a very poor public school, which God knows why we even had something so hoity-toity as fencing, right? But he was like an assistant sort of volunteer coach there. And like, yeah, 10 plus years. And something that he kind of like, I was struggling to explain to my parents like my career moves. Because they are much older and they came from a generation where you were the company man or woman. Actually, they came from a generation of company man. There was no company woman. So that's how much older they are. And trying to explain to them like what is even machine learning, when to be honest, like even amongst us in a community, we can't always seem to like agree or come to a consensus of what that is. And I try to explain it to my parents. And, he was saying that, part of the frustration of people who are outside the tech field when they look in is that there is this language, there's this capital that is used to describe, just a lot of the work that we do. And a lot of times when people don't have access to that capital, it becomes very, very hard to break into tech. You could be the smartest person in the world, but if you do not have those connections, if you don't have the language, if you don't like talk the talk, I mean, so many of my friends, right, they can tell you about how they have to code switch, it's a real thing. It's a real blocker. And so if I didn't have like my mentor to not necessarily tell me about like tech, but to help guide me in terms of how someone can kind of bootstrap their career, I would not have a career because my own family did not have the capital to help guide me in that. Yeah, so it just super important. And a lot of times I think some people think mentors are like they have to give you the advice for your career. No, 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 no. That's not like what they're there for, right? They are not always there to give you personalized, like, how do you interview for an ML engineering job at Amazon? Well, they didn't have ML engineering like 20, 30 years ago necessarily in that specific form. But what my mentor gave me was first off, a moral code. What are the things that you do or do not do, like as a professional? How do you ensure that how you do your work is aligned to your values? And the most important thing my mentor told me was that, like, look, or showed me was that you can live the life that others give you. You know, Either you adopt it because of the stereotypes or the biases that society has about you. You can live that life. You can kind of like go with the stream, or you can have I was gonna say the cojones, but maybe I shouldn't. Or you can, have the grit to come up with your own destiny. And so those were really important. If I didn't have that mentor and two, three others, and really good mentors I can count on like one hand, but they were amazing in terms of the impact. So yeah, wouldn't even have had like a career without that mentor.
Absolutely love it. I know this is a bit in contrast. I think last week we opened up talking about our bad bosses, and that was an interesting discussion. If anybody has questions in the chat here or on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you may be watching this, let me know right there in the chat. I will add you to the queue. But yeah, I mean, Mark, have you had like, okay, so the question that we were just kind of warming up here talking about with, and if anybody wants to chime in, please do. It's like, I was reflecting back on my career. It's been 20 years since I graduated high school. I have had to go much of this journey alone. I've not had, like, the few times that I actually did have bosses that I directly reported to, they're horrible. And I just keep finding myself in positions where I don't have bosses and I'm just like doing shit on my own. But I'm wondering how different your career, do you think your career would have turned out if you didn't have those awesome bosses, awesome managers, mentors, things like that? We'll go to Mark, then Greg, then if anybody else wants to chime in, let me know. Also, if you guys got questions right there in the chat, let me know. That's how you get added.
Yeah, so I think for me, my current manager is exceptional. She's has both the technical background, so I can talk kind of the technical concepts, but also like has a background in IO psychology and workforce and how to be an effective manager. And also like our product at our company is geared towards culture and building better work habits. And so I kind of got really lucky in that it's just a whole system designed to have really effective managers. But more importantly, like where my career would be, I think it came at a critical moment because at my last role, I had a really bad manager that really made me question whether or not I was good enough to be a data scientist. There's a difference between like putting in the work, but like sometimes you put in the work and you're just not cut out for it. And it's like, is it worth the effort to really get to that point? But coming to this role, it made me realize, oh, actually, it wasn't me. It was a combination of forces and just didn't have a good manager to help direct me at an early state. And so now that I have this exceptional manager, I'm able to think more critically, like, what does my career look like moving forward as a data scientist? And I'm able to have effective conversations of, all right, here's where I'm currently at. Here's where I'm trying to go. Here are the key steps I need to get to. And I think a key thing that really directed a lot of my work recently, I had a conversation with my manager. She's like, look, you're doing great on the technical side. Like, you're probably one of the better ones on our team currently. Like, you should actually focus less on that. The key growth area for you is going to be on the business side of really connecting those technical skills to business needs. And that was like a quick aha moment, like, because I really haven't been able to have those conversations with anyone beyond this amazing group, but more so tied directly to my actual career at the moment. So just having an amazing manager that's both knows how to work with people and have the technical side has been a game changer for me. And it's really 10x my current data science career. And I feel like if I didn't have that, I don't think I would be at the current level I'm at, nor have the dreams I currently have of where I want to go with data science.
Thank you very much, Mark. Also, shout out to the community members in the building. Russell, what's up? Akshay, what's up? Spencer, we got my entire bottom row is just Matt. I got Matt Blaza, Matt Sharp, Matt Diamond, and then Dare George. George, I know you sent me a message on LinkedIn, so I'm happy to get your question after this. But let's hear from Greg, and then everybody else, wherever you're watching this. If you got questions, let me know. I'll add you to the queue. Go for Greg.
Yeah, so I definitely enjoyed listening to pretty much everyone here about how great a mentor is. It's true. We all need that. We all need the role models in our lives to be inspired. And I've been lucky enough to have those folks come in and out, and help me from the first person who gave me a chance to start my first job, knowing that I was on a work permit. And I felt grateful for that. But at the same time, I saw my first manager who gave me that first chance as a mentor. But at the same time, that same mentor told me something that ran me away from the company without knowing he was doing so. That actually helped me go beyond, to where I am today. So I tried to change my mindset to a different thing, meaning a mentor could be anyone that's already doing something that you want to do. It could be anyone that's younger than you. It could be older. You just have to set your mindset for pulling the right stuff that gets you to the next level from that person. A mentor doesn't have to know he or she is a mentor. And that's how I look at it. When I get inspired by people out there, if I tell you, Power BI, for example, I saw someone who was in his 60s, early 60s, like killed himself to master the tool. And I was like, look at me, I'm in the early stage of my career, and look at this tool here. I'm comfortable with Excel, and this tool is coming to me. I need to learn it. If he can find so much energy to learn how to use this tool, plug in multiple data sources into something that tells a story, and he feels so passionate about it, that's inspiration for me. All of a sudden, this guy became my mentor without him knowing it. So it's the ability to me to uh, uh, distinguish or surface the folks that can help you push through the next stage of your life. To me, is what gets you to the next step, and being able to appreciate that sometimes, and going back to that person and saying, "Thank you. This is what you did for me," without you not even knowing it. So, I try not to say that having a mentor is a finite thing. It's a continuous thing. You could come tomorrow and find somebody new in your life that inspires you to go to the next direction. And I can say I've been grateful to find those folks around me on a daily basis that got me to where I am today. So yeah.
I love it, Greg. Thank you so much. Also, hopefully you guys got a chance to tune in to the Data Community Content Creators Award. It was earlier this week on Tuesday. It's also live on the Dedicated webpage. Greg was a speaker there. He did an awesome job. Also, special shout out to to one of our community members here, Mr. Eric Sims. Eric Sims is voted by the data community as their favorite LinkedIn personality, which I fucking love. That is awesome. Congratulations, Eric. Eric, you put some awesome stuff here in the chat. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that? Also, everybody else, if you have questions, you gotta let me know so I can add you to the queue. So go for Eric.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it's also important to recognize what a good manager or mentor looks like for you specifically. It took me, a few jobs to kind of figure that out. And I realized that I personally like hands-off managers. Part of the reason I really like my current manager is, they just give you space. And if there's a problem, like ask for help. Otherwise, you're good. Just go for it. And I really like that because I like to work on my own and experiment and break things and fix them and that kind of thing. And then there are other people like my wife, for example. She's really collaborative. And so if a manager is like, here, I'll talk to you in a few days, it's just like I'm alone on an island and it just feels terrible, right? And a lot of people are, collaborative learners versus independent learners. And so, different strokes for different folks was just kind of the thing that came to mind. And so I think it's important to realize that what works for me may not work for you, and that's fine.
Excellent point. Thank you so much, Eric. Also, shout out to Eric Gitonga in the building. Eric was one of two people who helped tally up the votes independently. We had Eric and J. Raj Parmar from the community who helped me make sure that the counts were independently validated by two third parties. Dare George, my friend, you hit me up on LinkedIn. So I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to you. Where are you? Yes, there you are. I see now. Oh, you're muted if you don't got a question, all good. Don't worry. Oh, there you go. Looks like we're having some audio issues there with Dare Jordan.
All right. Thank you. I do that I would if I have any.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some severe audio issues there, my friend. Just go ahead, type that right in the chat, and let us know if you got questions. What's up, Greg? Matt Diamond, how you guys doing? Go for it, Greg. If you got a question or anything, I just saw you're unmuted there.
Me?
Yeah. No?
Oh, I'll come up with my question later.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, Lee Anthony, how's it going? Clint, what's up? Nice to see you guys here. So, yeah, man, that was a good discussion so far. Let me know if you guys got any questions or any other topics for discussion, because I can just make stuff up off the top of my head. If that'll work.
I just have like a really small daily day-to-day kind of thing. So I am currently trying to figure my way around, 500 tables or so, and figure out, how they all relate in meaningful ways, right? And I have not so far been able to find like a good schema diagram. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means I haven't been able to find it yet. But I was wondering if anybody knows of any kind of tool or resource or anything where otherwise I was just considering coding something up that will basically use what I know of the system to take the table name and the keys that I can see and then map me to different tables so that I can just make something for myself as a reference. But if anybody knows of any sort of a tool I can use or even the right words, I think it's like a schema diagram. But anything practical would be super helpful. Save me some time.
Well, help us out a little bit. Describe what it's going to look like when it's done.
The thing that I think about is like box of table, line to other table, showing which keys connect to what other tables. And then from there, I could, add notes of like, this table tells you this, and this table tells you this, and that sort of thing.
ERD, entity relationship diagram.
Thank you.
Name.
Or is it more of a map?
Mark, go for it. Sorry, Lee. Lee or Mark, either one of you guys.
Is it more of a map, kind of flow chart, kind of A to B to C kind of thing?
I mean, it could be A to B to C. It could just be, like this table is like a fact table and has like these dimension tables that like relate to it or something. And I just, in my mind, it's like easyerd.com, and it's, that kind of some kind of a tool or something.
Well, if it's just a map, Google has a little mind map program. It's a templated kind of thing. You can put like a little bubble, and then it lets you draw an arrow to the next bubble, and then to the next bubble if that helps. That's just a quick, dirty tool to just give you a point of reference. It's built into Google Sheets, so you can do that pretty easily.
So just clarify, Eric, like, are you looking for something where you just say, okay, here are all my tables, and then it'll just find the relationships for you between like primary keys, foreign keys, and like spit out at ERD? Because that would be awesome. I'd love that. But Mark, go for it.
I just went through this process for the startup, and I know exactly that we do not have that resource. So I was the one to create it. And so it was rough. The thing you're looking for is called the entity relationship diagram, so ERD, what Harpreet was mentioning. And then also I think the right terminology is like there's different ways to connect it. There's like crow's feet notation as well, which provides information on like the directionality and like where are the primary keys. And then also another key terms you want to look up is primary key and then primary composite key. So like for your table, is it essentially, like a one specific value that connects it as a primary key, or there's a primary composite key where it's like multiple values? So like for me, it'll be like user ID, org ID, and then I don't know, date, making something up. Sure. And again, that's like the unique value. It'll be like a unique set of values to tell you it's a distinct row. So those are the key things I will look for. A tool I used for this is Lucidchart. Mm-hmm. But you can essentially look up like an ERD tool. I think the big challenges, especially since you're working with company data, is just getting approved by security. So if you don't have one already, just ask security, hey, is this a tool I can use for free? There's certain free tools. Hopefully you're not using BigQuery. I use BigQuery, and unfortunately they don't allow exporting your metadata. And so all the nested values I had to do manually, and it was a layer of hell trying to figure that out. If you do that, I have a link for you if you have BigQuery to navigate that. But for the most part, many other tools are much nicer and can export that metadata that tells you what are the table values and their primary and/or composite keys and how they connect.
That sounds pretty sweet. Okay. Yeah, I actually just barely became even aware of the concept of a primary composite key recently. So that's definitely something to look into.
Mikiko, go for it. And then we have data engineers in our midst somewhere. Where is Matt Sharp? And I think Matt Blaza is data governance, but that might be helpful. Or Vin, but Mikiko, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a fan of the lazy way. So depending on what SQL editor you use, dbeaver and Razor SQL, I think both have an option to generate ERD diagrams. I mean, a creative option, I guess, is you could, I mean, Eric, you were doing some work with like network graphing libraries, right? So that's another option to do it.
Sure.
But I don't know. I mean, like my 2 cents. I don't know you would need to necessarily map all the tables, or if you do, you'd still probably want to like pass it by like data engineering or data governance or whoever's kind of responsible for that. The nice thing with some tools like dbeaver, for example, if the engineers have like annotated the columns, you'll actually see you'll see like the comments like on the columns, and sometimes they describe like they actually define like what is this column, right? But it's one of these weird things where a lot of times when you're working with databases, they're kind of like these like weird living artifacts where probably like, you know, a bunch of the tables are just going to be used for like transactional purposes. So there isn't really any deeper meaning behind it, but some of the other tables, which are more like the aggregate BI tables, that's where kind of the real sort of defining or conversations kind of need to happen, just because you can have like a couple different ways to define metrics. But I would look at first like out of the box stuff like on a SQL editor. And then I would consider like how many tables, like essentially what information would you actually need from those tables?
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
It depends. Like I think it's really super useful. Especially like for me, like I'm going through that right now where like being new to the job, I have to like kind of map all the different like data flows and BigQuery's SQL transformations and all that. So it's a really good way to understand what is under the hood, to get like I think the real definition. It's always good to talk to the data engineering and the business teams.
Cool. Yeah, that's good.
Speaking of data engineers, we can get some insight here from one. Matt Sharp, go for it.
I mean, I don't really have anything much more to say than what's already been said. So
awesome. Well, you got some good resources there and some good URLs. Somebody in LinkedIn says Visio as well, if you want to draw that out. Thank you, Debingen, on LinkedIn. Eric, is that some satisfactory results for you there?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. Like, you know, like Mikiko was saying, I think that, 80% of the work's going to come from 20% of tables, right? And so for me, I can probably do it with 20 or 30 tables or so. I don't necessarily need all of them, but it's like finding also then what's in each of those tables that's going to be meaningful. Because it's like, oh my gosh, that column was there the whole time. I didn't even realize, like that definitely had a few of those moments in the past week or so.
Yeah. When I started my current job, it was kind of like that. Like there's a bunch of tables with really uninformative names. And I had to go around and I think I talked to like 6 or 7 people to finally figure out what tables it was that I actually needed, and then what each individual column meant, and then how everything was connected. It took a lot of groundwork. And I think, that kind of just speaks to data maturity of a company, which Mark was talking about in a post earlier today. But Mark, I also see you have your hand up, so go for it.
Just one more thing is like many times these diagrams are static, and so they may have changed since the time they were made. So I think one of the more important things you can do is identify who generated the data, or if this is something that your company has generated or somewhere you're getting from somewhere else, because those would be the key stakeholders to confirm things, especially when you use it in SQL and you find some funny business.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, I mean, what's the data maturity like at your company, Eric? Not to put them on blast on LinkedIn for everyone to hear.
Yeah, well, I mean, from my perspective, it's great. Like I think I trust the things that I see, because usually when something is wrong, it's because I did it wrong. And I can usually find the correct number by, triangulating elsewhere and things like that. And to the credit of whoever had the idea to set our tables up, like the way that they have named things, there's a lot of really good consistency both across like table names, as well as like it's pretty intuitive to find the keys. Like if you see a column in a table, you can easily figure out what table it's related to. And so I think I probably have it better than many people in that respect, but I'm just trying to figure out how do I flatten the learning curve for me as to finding those like key tables, and then also make it easy for the next person who comes in to be like, these are the 1 or 2 dozen tables I need to pay attention to first, and then can grow out from there. So fortunately, I don't think I'm at the place of where Mark's sitting, of having to do everything from the ground up basically, but happy to learn from anybody's experience, so thank you.
Awesome, Eric. Thank you. Yeah, Mark just posted a great paper here on data maturity. That's interesting that we got this topic of data maturity, because like I'm doing this at work currently. I'm doing like a current state assessment, and like it's like, oh my God, dude, like, am I doing this right? What framework am I supposed to use? So I'm using the I think it's called DAMA, DAMA. I'm using their framework, level 0 through level 5. I mean, but the time being spent on it, it's kind of hard to kind of communicate the value or ROI of doing this current state assessment. So maybe Vin, is that something you can help us understand? What are some words we can put into presentations, me specifically, about why it's important that I should be spending time on doing the current state assessment?
Well, this is going to be a general answer, and it's actually something you'll hear me babble about a lot tomorrow and on Sunday, but it's complexity. One of the biggest things that you want to do just at any stage is reduce the complexity of the business. And so anytime that you have a data set that doesn't make any sense to somebody who's coming in and onboarding, that's complexity. So onboarding now takes longer. It takes longer to scale the business. Anytime you have worst practices used in your data, just data governance in general, again, you have all sorts of complexity. Anybody that needs to use that data, especially if it's for model development, you don't know if you can trust it. You don't even know if you're using the right data. Yeah, the columns are labeled nicely, but do they actually contain what they claim to? And that's where I do when I'm talking to senior leadership and I'm trying to get some cash and get a couple of people hired and have their full-time job just be clean up one of many different types of train wrecks that I can run into. That's usually what I'll say is, look, this is adding complexity, and complexity is slowing down the scale that your expansion desires have. And so we're slowing that down. We could be going faster, and you're always worried as an executive, are you going fast enough? And you're also looking at something that's going to decrease the quality of anything downstream. So now you have scale slowdowns, you have quality issues, and those are the kinds of things that you can talk about. It's just anything that they're scared of, and scale and quality are two just easy ones that you can always use.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Vin. Matt Blaza, if you're around, I'd like to ask you a question about data governance. Matt Blaza knows a thing or two about data governance, and I'm wondering, like, how do we, like, because when we talk about data governance, right? People, like, just that word governance, I think gives people, bad taste in their mouth. Like, what are you talking about, data governance? Like, we want data freedom. How do you communicate the value of data governance to people who are, maybe have those initial feelings like I'm talking about? Matt Palazzo, are you still here?
Hey, I'm I kind of got an emergency going on right now.
All right. Hey, well, handle it. I gotta get you on the podcast to talk about that. That's for sure.
Yeah, sometime.
Yeah.
I got some tables to join. I'll be right back.
Have fun, man. Awesome. Hey, anybody else got questions on anything? Please go ahead and let me know. I can add you to the queue. Checking on LinkedIn and YouTube. Don't see anything there. So Dare has a question. He actually typed it out here. So I'll read it. Data science and machine learning is relatively new in my country. I really want to be one of the go-to persons in my nation and highly sought after. I want to push myself there as an authority. Can you advise which route I could take? Also, what service or assistance can I give to organizations to help them get value, even if it's not being paid for yet? It's a good question. I mean, one thing to do is just start talking about it, right? Start making yourself available for presentations and groups like that, and then activities like that. Sorry, but yeah, I'd like to hear what anybody else here thinks. Let's go to Vin, because Vin's OG in this space and becoming a leader in this space.
It's hard to create a category. That's what you're doing. Yeah, it's been created in other countries, so you have precedent. There's interest in other countries, so there's definitely things to leverage. But to become an expert, to create the category and then put yourself at the top of that space, that's a really big challenge, and you need some sort of a source of authority, and you'll need some sort of large project. Those are my two. Like, if you can find a company that's highly credible, and in your country specifically, a company that's well respected and that has some sort of connection where you can say, hey, here's a use case where I can make you a ton of money with data science, you can get them bought in. And that's really going to take connections. You have to go into the company, and it's, senior leader by senior leader pitching them and putting yourself at the center of the solution to their problem, and putting data science and machine learning methodologies at the center of the solution to their problem. And especially if this is something that just isn't being done by a lot of companies in your country, that's hard. That's a lot of work. And then once you get that done, once you've, walked your way through, done all the selling, you have to make sure you don't get edged out of that use case, because a lot of times you open the door, you create the opportunity, and then Deloitte shows up or Accenture shows up, and they just kind of push you to the side and they're like, oh, hey, thanks. And you have to make sure that you don't end up getting kind of caned off the stage. And then from there, you have to maintain enough credit for a project that you did at a company who wants to take all the credit themselves. So you have to maintain some level of credit, and that's your source of authority. That's your credibility. And then you have to advertise that like crazy. So it's hard, but it's doable.
I like that. So it seems like a first step would be, like you said, find like the biggest company in your country, and then find out what industry that company is in, and just look for case studies or use cases, white papers, whatever that you can find that deal specifically with that company's industry. But obviously look for machine learning, data science type of use cases, and research them, and just show them like, hey, this is something that you guys could be doing as well. Is that kind of like how that would go?
It's a lot of networking. It's really, anytime you do a consulting relationship, it's relationships building, or any sort of consulting agreement or consulting engagement. It's always relationships. And so you're going to be building relationships in that company. Getting hired into one is actually easier. I mean, it's almost easier to create your own position in that company, get hired into that position. And then as the company gets more mature and gets to be known within your country as an industry leader in data science, you kind of by association get your name in there. And that's another way to do it. Sometimes you have to just create that job, create the need in their mind, and then, ask, hey, would you mind hiring me?
Mm-hmm. So do you think a good idea would also be maybe starting just like a meetup group for data science and machine learning in your company, just something, or sorry, in your country, where people can kind of get together who have the same interest, and you organize the meeting, set the agenda, get people involved, and use that as an opportunity to network and also build that authority, and maybe even help people who are breaking into the field, help them with projects and things like that, lift them up. I think that would probably be a good way to build authority and your brand and your name in the space as well. Anybody else have thoughts on this? I'd love to.
Yeah, I have some thoughts.
Yeah, please.
First, like what Vin was saying, 100% agree. I think there's always other ways to get like to the top, and I guess that depends on what you mean by top. But I mean, part of that is maybe it's just a popularity contest, and I mean, it wasn't that long ago where there were a lot of like data charlatans. You can almost say people that had really large followings, but didn't necessarily know that much technically, but they were able to get the hype going, and they were really sought after because they were very popular. I mean, the other aspect is I mean, if you really want to be really sought after in the data space, you can go a very technical route. So you can write a lot of white papers. You can get a lot of patents. You can do these things that write books, do these things that distinguish you as a very technical leader, and that will always make you sought after. And then I guess probably a last solution for this is go become an expert in another country where it's already established, where it might be easier to grow and learn from mentors. And then when you have established yourself in another country, you can always move back, and you'll already have a lot of this experience and a lot of this I guess clout from maybe working somewhere else, not having already established yourself as an expert. So a couple
All
of
right.
ways to go about it.
Thank you very much. Mikiko, go for it.
Yeah, I guess just two additional comments. So there's producing value as a practitioner, and then there is producing content and sharing it with the community. So sometimes those can cross over, but sometimes they are totally unrelated, right? And I think these are like some of the quote unquote like charlatans. They do a lot of like sort of content, social media stuff, but they actually don't provide enough. They don't really provide a lot of value, and they also sometimes don't know how to even do the jobs that they talk about, right? So there is this, but there is overlap. There is overlap, right? And I think something that you know, if you look at, for example, people on this call, Harpreet, Vin, Eric, Mark, Greg, the things that they have done really well, number one is they have acquired, what Naval Ravikant calls special knowledge. So it is knowledge that is, it's not necessarily niche, but it is well defined, and it's also very valuable. And they also share it, so that can be an incredibly, from what I've seen so far, from how their careers are developing and all that, that can be a very, very powerful method. The other thing I would sort of make a comment on is, so the funny thing is that I think a lot of times, like in the US, we kind of position ourselves as like a superpower and all that, which, I'm not gonna say whether we are or not a technology superpower, but what I've observed, for example, is that in certain markets, for example, like India, South Africa, South Korea, there are certain solutions which, to be frank, American entrepreneurs would not have come up with because they are not in those markets and they would not have thought of those solutions. So, for example, mobile transportation is pretty big, not necessarily in the US, but it's pretty big in other markets, right? So it's possible that you can come up with solutions or ways to provide value in like your specific market that are very individual to that market, using some of the strategies or techniques that you would develop either as a data practitioner anyway. So that's something that I think you will sort of have an edge on versus compared to, like, for example, Americans, right? So there's always that kind of like opportunity or that white space for you as a practitioner in your country. But definitely, sharing knowledge, like developing specialized knowledge is really important, but also sharing it is also really important, because what my manager used to say is, she's like, you got two examples. She's like, you got some options. You could either be someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, but you have a big audience, which is really bad. you could be someone who's an expert and you have no audience, which, it means you can still get jobs, you can interview just fine, but you're not really expanding your opportunities to sort of capitalize it. But the best place to kind of aim for is to be pretty good at your job or pretty good as a practitioner with a decent audience. And you can always build up from there on either like in terms of expertise or in terms of, audience and connections.
Like that specific knowledge feels like play to me, looks like work to others. Mark, go for it.
Yeah, so I just speaking from someone who has not figured it out yet, but is trying to figure it out, trying to be like an industry expert. I don't know if I can say industry expert of my country, but it's pretty intense. And also, I asked earlier if you're a current practitioner or working towards it. I finally found your picture, and it was super effective in telling me who you are, which is really cool for the little icon. And it seems like you're currently a practitioner. And so, similar to what Kiko said, my current game plan of what I'm implementing right now and putting in action was like the first couple of years just really gaining expertise of data science and domain knowledge to get myself into a role. And then the next step was specifically seeking jobs that will push my technical skills and my ability to drive value, and specifically looking for roles that allow me to put things in production that I can point to, like I built that product piece and I can show others. Also, another reason why I'm moving away from healthcare, because a lot of my healthcare work had to be behind closed doors because of security reasons. And now I'm in more public facing product. There's company blogs where I can say like, I helped build that piece. The next component is my LinkedIn. I'm constantly engaging on LinkedIn. And in the past month, I've really taken it full throttle to really build up a presence and like setting specific goals to build up that presence. The reason being is that once I build up a presence, my next goal is to transfer that to my own platform. Like Harpreet has his podcast and his newsletter and all those things, right? Just some guy on the internet, right? No, he's amazing. But he's able to transfer that, so he owns that and it's not tied to LinkedIn. And so for me, that's my next step. Is like I'm trying to own that piece. And the reason being is that by having that collection, people see me as an expert. People share my resources. More importantly, the other step is networking. So I've been networking for a while, and by networking, I don't mean like trying to know as many people, but like try to gain as many meaningful connections. Because I have this whole mentality of like, I'm not competing with people. I'm trying to expand the pie with people. And the more people I know, and the more people I can connect and expand that pie with, the more opportunities that are come my way. And so by building that network, I can have more opportunities to expand the pie and have access to those big piece of projects that Vin's talking about, where it can put you, quote unquote, on the map. And so I think to summarize, I think Makila said much better than me earlier, but get domain expertise, share that knowledge, and then leverage that knowledge and network you've built to turn into opportunities. And I'm currently trying to do that. And I will get back to y'all in the future if I figure it out.
I love it, man. Positive sum games are the best games. I wouldn't say the only games worth playing, but they are the best games. Positive sum games are the best games. Mark, you actually also had a question as well. So I'll go straight into your question. By the way, everybody else listening, if you have questions, let me know in the chat, raise your hand, whatever, I can add you to the queue. If you're listening on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitch, if you got a question, let me know. Shout out to Marina, who made her way into the room from the LinkedIn comments. I'm glad you made it here. Dave Mango, what's up? Akshay, what's up? Tashi, haven't seen you in a long time, my friend. Good to see you again. Kelly, how's it going? Clint, everybody else. Good to see all you guys here. Go for it, Mark.
Yeah, I'm super happy we have a data engineer in the call. No pressure, Matt. Essentially, I've been thinking a lot about data pipelines at my job, but more so on the downstream side of like, all right, we have our database. How does it get into our data warehouse? So that part, I've talked to Joe quite a bit. I think I have a good enough grasp to do the job, but not be expert. The other side that our engineers are more so working on now is really thinking about our infrastructure of like our original data sources. How's that ingested into our database? And that's a whole new area that's just beyond me. And like I tried talking to them, and I think they're figuring it out too, because we don't have a data engineer at our company. And so we're all just kind of talking. And one specific question I have is, when you're doing data ingestion, is there any specific key terms to talk about making changes to a user over time and keeping track of those changes for data ingestion? That's a very specific question, but I think it leads to a lot of downstream impacts of our data quality. And if I had some key terms to look up further and research and get back to our eng team, that would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, Gopher, you're our stand-in recovering data scientist from Salt Lake City today in place of Joe Reese. So you go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to understand exactly what you're getting after. I mean, so there's kind of two aspects. I think one of the things you're looking for is probably an event sourcing architecture. So essentially, we're looking more at streams, because you seem to be caring a lot more about how users are changing over time. And so kind of, the traditional long story of how data has always been stored is we throw it in a database, and oh, something changed with the user and we're going to update it. And so the database is just kind of storing the information of the state, which is okay, but you're kind of throwing away a lot of that information and data of how things changed over time. And so kind of the modern way to do that is to use streams and to use what's called an event sourcing architecture, where essentially every single event that ever happens gets put into the stream, and it's immutable and it's logged for essentially for as long as you need it. Sometimes that's all time, sometimes it's not. And so then if you ever need to figure out what the state of the system is, you would just go and you would aggregate all this event information in the source. Hopefully this is kind of giving you some keywords to look at, but I mean,
I wasn't even aware of event sourcing architecture, so that is already a big plus for me.
Yeah, so I mean, this is why people would move to things like Kafka, and why it's pretty powerful is because of event sourcing really solves a lot of problems that you see in traditional architectures. But other than that, so like it kind of depends on where your data is coming in from, and a lot of that is actually, that comes from your software engineers as they're building your platform, and they're building object-oriented programming usually to kind of figure out, hey, this is how people can interact with our website, and these are things that are coming in. And then if you want to know how things are changing, often those platforms, you start adding logs and you start logging how users interact with your website. And
to kind of clarify, give you a good example, like we work with HRIS data, so it's HR platform management training. If someone is at IC, but then like later on they became a manager, but then they're like, I hate being a manager, 1 year later they go back to being an IC, like those has huge implications to our whole product, and being able to track those changes really well in a way that just doesn't have to involve jumping through hoops to figure out, that would just make our lives so much easier.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a complicated problem, and there's lots of different ways to kind of go about it. But so yeah, you can kind of look at some of those things I just mentioned.
That
Perfect.
even sounds like a master data type of issue, right? Just at a high level thinking about that. Vin, any insight, any suggestions here to help mark out Vin or Mikiko or any other engineers in the building?
I'm just going to say no. That would be where I would start. You can, but this is a rabbit hole. Just don't go too deep down this rabbit hole. Just do enough to get you by right now. And basically what you've been told is like, go through that and stop. It gets a lot worse. You can really over engineer this. So don't do that.
Thank you very much. Mark, was that helpful? Or Mikiko, any insight or tidbits here for Mark?
I don't think this will help, but one of my coworkers, who's I think a staff engineer, Mitch Seymour, he wrote a book called Gently Down the River. That is a children's book about Kafka involving otters. It's very cute. I would highly recommend reading it. Not because it will help you with this problem, but it will help you understand Kafka, which is one of the most widely used tools in the area it's trying to solve. So it may, but it will definitely be entertaining.
Link is right there. It is www.gentlydownthee.stream. I love that. I absolutely love that. Right on. Questions, comments from anybody else? Go ahead. Let me know right there in the chat or comment box, wherever it is that you are consuming this.
Well, actually, one comment I would make. So there's a reason why I work with our data engineering team and why I really respect the hell out of them is because they're solving problems like this a lot. And it really is complex because it's not, it is a tooling question, but it is also a process question too. And there's also concerns about resiliency and scalability and all that. So I would say, my recommendation would definitely be talk to some data engineers like Matt Sharp, anyone else you kind of know, because those are hard problems that, even at MailChimp, we have a team that solves those kinds of problems, right? As an ML engineer, I don't even touch that because it's so complicated. So if you feel a little stressed out, I would say, it's okay. If it's a hard problem to solve, it's not because you're not solving it. It's because it is a truly hard problem to solve that a lot of times takes people who are working and thinking about these kinds of problems, for their jobs, full-time jobs. So that's just the only thing I would put out there. And also read the book.
I definitely gonna read the book. Also completely recognize this insane problem to work on. So was not expecting a full blown here's the answer to it. Just more so Andrew just reaching out to the data science team, be like, hey, this is our proposed solution. Please check it out if you have any feedback. I just want to give at least some type of feedback that we don't make a decision that makes me regret life later.
Oftentimes when I come across these hard problems, and I'm stuck, it's usually because I don't have the vocabulary to go look for the answer it is that I'm looking for. And sessions like this, I feel are very, very helpful because somebody else might know a vocabulary term that you can then go and research and see, okay, is this applicable to what it is that I'm doing? And then in researching that vocabulary term, you might come across another couple ones and then research that. And eventually, within a few steps, you get to something that might work for you. But that's definitely I love solving hard problems. They're fun. I love researching and going down rabbit holes and doing things. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. Vin says, no matter what solution they implement, you will hate your life. And then everybody started laughing. So now I know why. So, I mean, speaking of resourcefulness, what are some tips you can share with anybody, anybody here on the call? What are some tips you could share with whoever's listening? If you come across a problem and you're like, shit, man, I don't have any idea how to solve this. What do I do? What are some things that you do when you come across a problem like that? Let's go to Eric, and then we'll move to Marina after that.
All right, I just posted it. I have to take off, but hopefully it was this Eric and not Eric Katonga. Otherwise, I'll just hand it off to him. But I have 1 minute.
Yeah.
So did you say resourcefulness for when you get stuck? Is that essentially what it was?
So what do you do when you're stuck and you don't know what to do when you're working on a problem? What's your first go-to move?
First go-to move is probably keep trying it in a little bit of a different way than Google, then Stack Overflow, and then somebody in my master's program talked about, they called it the rule of 3. So it's before you go ask a professor, ask 3 other people. And that actually works really well for making connections with people who are not your professor too. Because, that way I'm reaching out to this coworker and then some other coworker. And sometimes those 2 people will give me different answers, but maybe both of them work or whatever. And then before, and if they can't solve it or whatever, then it's okay, now I'm going to go ask a manager or somebody who I can, bug to get the answer. But I think I think we underestimate the value of just asking just asking normal people and asking our friends, and the connection that comes from it, because we realize that we have like mutual questions or mutual suffering or whatever, and we learn together.
Yeah, Eric's exactly right. I mean, when it comes down to the rule of threes, if, well, you like hearing that, that's cool. But no, if you can't explain it to somebody else and it's still stuck in your head, you haven't really kind of got to the real problem yet. So you kind of have to drill that down. And if by the second time you kind of went through you kind of rehearsed it a little bit, by the third time, three's the charm, 3 legs on a table kind of thing. Yeah, you're right on track. That's exactly right, Eric. If you can explain it to somebody else in a clear and simple, straightforward way, it becomes easier to solve. Until then, it's just a complex, hey, let's go to Mars.
Yeah, I love it. What else? How about let's hear from, I forgot who said, Marina. Yes, Marina, let's hear from you.
I think it's kind of like the same. It's just trying to like chunking things, right? So try to make the problem smaller. Can you try to make it smaller? Can you ask enough questions that, like you make the whole thing smaller, and then like talk to people, right? So like the whole thing about the rule of 3 or the rule of 300, like whatever you need to get there, to get your questions answered, but also it's because then you realize that maybe they were not the right questions, or you were not understanding the problem, which is, many times the case, or somebody come with something or a different idea, and then, I don't know, some light pops up, and then you are like, oh, okay, then I can do something else, right? And then, you just also like these chunks, then you just Google it and see what else come up, and then if you can read. But that, like I try to put that kind of like also a time frame for things, because at some point you have to decide, okay, maybe I cannot do it, like I don't know enough, and then I will have to really like sit down with somebody, right? Otherwise you can be with, in that cycle for too much time, right? So that's the other thing. So basically, chunking, and then asking, like try to ask enough questions, and then try to explain or to talk with somebody, because that's normally helps to clarify your thoughts, right? Or even like solve the problem. And if not, at some point you just like cry for help.
I love that tip about chunking, because like I'm super stubborn and I don't like set my time up front. I'm like, I'm gonna find the right words. And it's like 2 days later and I'm still looking for the answer. Let's hear from Russell and then from Vin on this. And just for context for everybody who's tuning in, and also Greg, we're talking about what you do when you're just stuck on a problem, like you don't have the right vocabulary to even begin to understand how to go and search for this, and you don't know what to do. How do you start working on a problem when you're at that stage? Let's go to Vin, Russell, and then Greg. And then if anybody else has questions, whether you are out there in LinkedIn or Twitch or YouTube or even here, let me know.
Sorry, old man unmuting. The interesting thing about data science is at some point, somebody's going to ask you to solve a problem that no one's ever solved before. And that's one of the cool things about our field, is you're going to get that where you Google, you go to Stack, you've done, these progressions are perfect. And you get to the point where you go, oh my God, no one has done this before. And so you're basically like, building Stack Overflow before Stack exists. I don't know how they did it, but somehow they managed to build that website without their website. And so what you have to do is, and this is a lot back to chunking, but breaking up the problem. You break up the problem into, these are problems that have been solved before. And this is the real novel thing that I have to solve. And typically what you find is 95% of this thing that you thought was crazy has never been done before. Actually, when you break the solution down, like 95% of it's been done. And so you can pull that solution as your starting base, and then you figure out what really has never been done before. And you start with, well, why hasn't anyone done this before? Because again, the majority of the time you realize the reason why no one's ever done this before is because you really shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do this. This isn't something that you want to do. You should probably be doing it a different way. And so that, again, eliminates a whole bunch of those, oh, I've just been asked to do something that's never been done before. And then when you finally get one of those problems where for real, not only has it never been done before, but you really should try this thing. There's actually something here. You have to, and this is the interviewing piece, you have to start interviewing people who have tried and failed to solve this problem. That's hard. It's hard to find people who are willing to admit, I tried this, I went down this rabbit hole and I failed miserably. And they'll tell you some of the mistakes they've made if you're lucky, and then you can avoid all those mistakes. Now, and you're hearing how long of a process this is. And so when you finally do get a project where it's like, yeah, number one, this hasn't been done before. Number two, it should be done. You have to then go back to the people who asked you to do it and say, look, this has never been done before. It's going to take a long time and cost a lot of money. Are you sure? And that's one of the interesting things about problem solving is when you do find one of these novel problems, half the time you don't even get the opportunity to solve it. You get halfway down that road and then somebody goes, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely love that. I recently finished this book, How to Solve It, by George or Greg Poila, Pauly or something like that. But he talks about solving problems in 4 different stages. So there's a question here from YouTube: getting stuck constantly with the vast majority of things to cover in data science and lack of learning structure doesn't help either. How should I practice the skills that I learn on real world projects? Okay, so how could I practice the skills that I learn on real world projects? I just really like this framework that's set out in How to Solve It. I think, Makiko, you've also got that book recently, but it starts with first understanding the problem and then asking yourself a series of questions. What's the unknown? What's the data? What are my conditions? Is it possible to satisfy the conditions? Or in this case, assumptions, when you're thinking about machine learning algorithms, statistical techniques. Are the assumptions sufficient to determine the unknown? Then you devise a plan. So find the connection between the data and the unknown. Have you seen this type of problem before? Or in Vin's case, have you not seen it, which Mark wants to have an example from for the real world, which we'll get to. Or have you seen the same problem in a slightly different form? Do you know a related problem? Do you know another technique that might be helpful here? And then you carry out your plan. So carry out the plan of the solution, checking each step, right? And then is each step correct? Am I doing this right? And then you look back, examine the solution that you got. So I like that book, How to Solve It. It was a excellent read. I highly recommend it. So hopefully Amin Raj there on YouTube that answered your question. There's a question here from Mark about a specific example from your career. Vin, do you have anything you share?
Caught me typing a message.
Ah,
sorry. Well, I missed about the last minute. I'm sorry. I was just typing up a message.
No. So Mark's asking here, can you provide a specific example from your career, problem you have worked on that hasn't been done before, or something that you might be able to share, just to kind of give us a example, if you're not under an NDA.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to say. All my best work is under NDA, but I'm trying to think if there's something I could share. I can't like live. No, I probably shouldn't, even if I could.
So I got another question here coming in from LinkedIn from my good friend Ravati. Ravati, how's it going? Good to see you there. You should just join in on the chat. What are you doing in the comments there? She wants to know, is event-driven architecture an alias for Lambda architecture? I got no clue. Anybody want to take this one on? Makiko, Vin, anyone? Is event-driven architecture an alias for Lambda?
I know they're not the same. I think Lambda is, one of them is a type of the other, or it's a way to implement the other. But this is why we really need Matt Sharp to stay on. I'm shaming him so he can see this on video after it's posted.
Mark's asking, Lambda in AWS or Lambda in Python? Are there more than one type of Lambda? I know of those two, but like, is there more than those two types of Lambdas?
Yeah, so there is, and I think this is a challenge because some terms in like in data engineering and machine learning engineering are actually overloaded because okay. So the key phrase is hosted and managed everything. So basically, what Amazon, Google, and I think Microsoft does is they will typically take existing open source architecture or libraries, and then they'll essentially just bring it sort of like host and manage it within their, I guess, ecosystem, right? So, for example, like GKE is Google managed Kubernetes, right? Uh, Cloud Function is Google's version of like Lambda functions. So it's like, it's one of these things where you have the like software Lambda, but you can also, a lot of it's based off of like specific architectural types or designs. And specifically with like Lambda and AWS, it's essentially based off of like calling through functions, right? Which are used to trigger other things. But that's like different from the Lambda that is relevant to the event-based streaming architecture that Matt was talking about. And this is also why I'm not on the data engineering team, because I don't know any of this. I only interact with it after the data engineers do such a great job of getting it into a place.
Only thing I know about data engineering is like ETL. I don't know if that's even like to me when I hear data engineering, it's like, oh, it's ETL, but there's so much freaking more to it that I did not know of until I started working with software and stuff like that. ELT is also a hot phrase. Yes, it is. That's true. That's when you can build a data lake, then build a data lake house, and you build a data canoe to take it to your data marts. Yeah, it's ELT there. Any other questions? Let me know. If not, we'll begin to wind it down. Shout out to everybody that we did not hear from. Kelly, what's up? Matt Diamond, what's up? Tashi, good to see you again. Akshay, man, didn't even get to hear from, man. How you been?
I've been good. I started working at Shopify this month and still absorbing everything. So my brain's really fried after the trainings, but it's been amazing. I'll have a lot more to share in the coming weeks. And the good news is I'm getting Fridays off for the next 2 months. So I'm going to join for the happy hours, but maybe on top of a mountain, as long as I have network.
I love that, man. I absolutely love that. Yeah, congratulations. I remember I was listening in, it must have been like a week or two ago, I was listening into one of the office hours sessions, and it was the one where you and Greg were talking about like the regulatory type of stuff, compliance type of stuff, and you were interviewing. I think that was the last interview you had with Shopify. So congratulations on landing that. That is awesome. Guys, make sure you tune into the episode I released just a couple of days ago with Ken G. Not a couple of days ago, this morning with Ken G. It's a great episode. If you're listening to this live or if you're watching the replay on YouTube, it's still not too late to join in on Vin's course this weekend. Vin, can you like give me a link so I could share it across all these different socials? I'm looking
it's all
forward
the way
to it.
back at the top.
Okay, it's all the way back at the top. I'll go ahead and post that, guys. Definitely join in on that. I'm excited to learn from Vin this weekend. I know you guys are gonna have a good time if you join as well. So definitely check that out. Next week, episode with Jordan Ellenberg. I'll give away a copy of this book. This very copy, he was generous enough to send me 2 copies. So I got one to give away. I'll tune in. You got to join here in the Zoom room. I'll randomly select somebody to give the book to. George Farrakhan on LinkedIn is saying congrats, Akshay. So congrats to you, my friend, from George Farrakhan. And no other questions from any other platforms. My friend, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join me today and hang out. Be sure to tune in to the podcast. Be sure to reach out, say hi to a family friend member. I'm just rambling now at this point. Got nothing else to say. Guys, remember, you've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? Cheers, everyone.